Signal from the unknown. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, the Galactic Council had long reigned supreme. Comprised of the most advanced and influential civilizations, the Council had brought stability and prosperity to countless worlds. They had faced many challenges over the eons, always emerging victorious. But now, a new mystery loomed on the horizon, one that would test their resolve like never before. It began as a faint whisper, a barely perceptible signal emanating from an unexplored sector of space. At first, the Council's astronomers dismissed it as background noise, just another anomaly in the endless sea of stars. But as the days turned into weeks, the signal persisted, growing stronger and more distinct with each passing moment. Intrigued, the Council tasked its finest minds with analyzing the mysterious transmission. They pored over the data, running it through their most advanced algorithms and simulations. What they found defied explanation. The signal was unlike anything they had encountered before, a complex pattern that seemed to be almost intelligent. As the Council debated the implications of this discovery, a sense of unease began to spread through their ranks. Some argued that the signal could be a distress call from a lost civilization, one that had somehow escaped their notice. Others feared that it might be something far more sinister, a harbinger of an impending threat. Determined to unravel the mystery, the Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from each member species gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall, their faces etched with concern and anticipation. At the center of the room, a holographic display flickered to life, showcasing the enigmatic signal in all its complexity. Fellow councilors, began the Archon, the elected leader of the Council. We stand at the precipice of a new era. This signal, whatever its origin, demands our attention. We cannot afford to ignore it. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber as the councilors nodded their assent. They knew that the Archon was right. This was a matter of utmost importance, one that could potentially shape the future of the entire galaxy. But what do we do? Asked Councilor Zath, his reptilian eyes narrowing with concern. We have no idea what we're dealing with here. Sending a fleet to investigate could be dangerous. Dangerous or not, we must act, countered Councilor Lyra, her melodic voice ringing clear through the hall. If there is even a chance that this signal could lead us to a new ally or a new threat, we must pursue it. The debate raged on for hours as the councilors weighed their options. Some advocated for caution, arguing that they should observe from afar before committing any resources. Others pushed for immediate action, insisting that time was of the essence. In the end, it was the Archon who made the final decision. Rising from his seat, he addressed the assembled councilors with a grave expression. "We cannot afford to hesitate," he declared. "The stakes are too high. I hereby order the assembly of a reconnaissance fleet to investigate the source of this signal. They will be our eyes and ears in the unknown, tasked with uncovering the truth behind this mystery." The councilors murmured their assent, knowing that the Archon's word was law. As the session adjourned, a sense of purpose filled the air. The Council had made its decision. Now, all that remained was to see what the future would bring. Deep in the uncharted reaches of space, a lone planet orbited a dying star. Its surface was a barren wasteland, scoured by the relentless winds of time. But beneath its desolate exterior, an ancient secret lay dormant, waiting to be discovered. As the Council's fleet set out on its mission, they had no idea what lay ahead. They were venturing into the unknown, guided only by the mysterious signal that had captured their attention. Little did they know that their journey would bring them face to face with a power beyond their wildest imaginings, one that would change the course of the galaxy forever. The signal grew stronger as they approached the planet, pulsing with an otherworldly intensity. The crew of the lead ship exchanged nervous glances as they watched their instruments fluctuate wildly. Whatever was down there, it was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. As they entered orbit around the planet, the signal reached a crescendo, flooding their sensors with an overwhelming surge of data. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines. The captain of the lead ship, a grizzled veteran named Korvax, leaned forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on the view screen. "What the hell just happened?" he muttered, his voice tinged with confusion and unease. His first officer, a lithe Silurian named Zara, shook her head in bewilderment. "I don't know, sir, but whatever it was, it's gone now." Korvax frowned, his brow furrowed in thought. He had a feeling that this was only the beginning, that the true nature of their mission was about to reveal itself. And as he gazed down at the desolate planet below, he couldn't shake the sense that they were about to uncover something that would change everything. The reconnaissance fleet had arrived at the source of the signal. Now, the real work would begin. They would have to land on the planet's surface, investigate the ancient ruins that dotted its landscape, and uncover the truth behind the mysterious transmission. But as they prepared to disembark, none of them could have anticipated the incredible discovery that awaited them. For on this barren world, an ancient secret lay buried, one that would soon shake the very foundations of the galaxy itself. The signal had led them here, to this forgotten corner of the cosmos. And now, as they stood on the brink of a new era, the crew of the reconnaissance fleet knew that their mission had only just begun. Ancient ruins. The reconnaissance fleet descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, their ships cutting through the haze like gleaming arrows. As they approached the surface, the desolation of the world below became apparent. Jagged peaks and yawning chasms scarred the landscape, a testament to the unforgiving nature of this forgotten realm. But amidst the barren expanse, something caught their attention. A cluster of structures, carved into the very bedrock of the planet, stood out like a beacon in the wilderness. These were no natural formations, but the unmistakable handiwork of an intelligent species. As the ships touched down on the rocky plateau, the crew prepared to disembark. They were a diverse group, hailing from a dozen different worlds, each with their own unique abilities and perspectives. But they were united in their purpose, bound together by the thrill of discovery and the weight of their mission. Korvax was the first to set foot on the planet's surface, his boots crunching against the dusty ground. He took a moment to survey the surroundings, his eyes tracing the contours of the ancient ruins that loomed before them. "All right, people," he said, his voice crackling over the comlink. "We don't know what we're dealing with here, so stay sharp, keep your eyes open, and your wits about you." The team fanned out, each member taking up a position around the perimeter of the ruins. They moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons at the ready, prepared for any eventuality. As they approached the entrance to the largest structure, Zara held up a hand, her scanner beeping insistently. "I'm picking up some kind of energy signature," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's faint, but it's definitely coming from inside the ruins." Korvax nodded, his expression grim. "Then that's where we're headed. Zara, take point. The rest of you, fall in behind her." The team moved cautiously into the structure, their flashlights piercing the gloom. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, a testament to the countless ages that had passed since these halls had last known life. As they progressed deeper into the ruins, the energy signature grew stronger, guiding them onwards like a beacon in the darkness. They passed through chambers filled with strange, alien machinery, the purpose of which could only be guessed at. But still they pressed on, driven by the thrill of discovery and the weight of their mission. Finally, they reached the heart of the complex, a vast chamber that seemed to stretch on forever. And there, in the center of the room, they found the source of the energy signature. It was an artifact, unlike anything they had ever seen before, a pulsing orb of energy, suspended in midair by some unseen force. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic in its beauty, drawing them in with an almost irresistible pull. Korvax approached it cautiously, his scanner held out before him. "What is it?" he breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. Zara shook her head, her expression one of awe and trepidation. "I don't know," she said softly. "But it's ancient. older than anything we've ever encountered before. As they stood there, transfixed by the artifact's otherworldly glow, something strange began to happen. The orb started to pulse more rapidly, its light growing brighter and more intense with each passing second. And then, without warning, it released a burst of energy that washed over them like a tidal wave. It was a message, a communication from a long-dead civilization, encoded in a language that none of them could understand. But even as they struggled to comprehend its meaning, the artifact began to change. It shifted and twisted, its form becoming fluid and malleable, until it had reshaped itself into something new. It was a key, a gateway to a power beyond their wildest imaginings. And as they stood there, transfixed by its alien majesty, they knew that their mission had taken on a new and terrifying significance. For this was no mere relic of a bygone age, but a harbinger of something far greater, a force that had lain dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now, as the crew of the reconnaissance fleet stood on the brink of a new era, they knew that they had stumbled upon a secret that would change the course of the galaxy forever. The artifact pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its light casting eerie shadows on the walls of the ancient chamber. Korvax and his team exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and trepidation. "We need to report this back to the Council," Korvax said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "They need to know what we've found." Zara nodded, her fingers already dancing across her comm unit. But before she could send the message, a tremor rocked the chamber, sending dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. "What the hell was that?" one of the other team members shouted, his voice tinged with fear. Korvax shook his head, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. "I don't know," he said grimly, "but we need to get out of here. Now." They turned to leave, but before they could take more than a few steps, another tremor shook the chamber, this one even stronger than the first. The walls began to crack and crumble, ancient stone giving way under the strain. "Run," Korvax shouted, his voice barely audible over the sound of collapsing masonry. The team raced for the exit, dodging falling rocks and debris as they went. But even as they fled, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, some ancient presence that had been awakened by their intrusion. They burst out of the ruins just as the entire structure collapsed in on itself, sending up a cloud of dust and rubble that obscured the sky. Korvax and his team stood there, panting and shaken, as they watched the ancient complex disappear beneath the debris. "What now?" Zara asked, her voice trembling slightly. Korvax took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Now," he said grimly, "we wait for the Council's response, and pray that we haven't unleashed something we can't control." High above the planet's surface, a massive shape emerged from the depths of space. It was a ship, but not like any the Council had ever seen before. It was vast, dwarfing even the largest of their own vessels, and it moved with a grace and power that seemed almost otherworldly. As it approached the reconnaissance fleet, a hail crackled across their comm channels. "Greetings," a voice said, calm and measured. "We come in peace." Korvax and his team exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. For the voice that had spoken was undeniably human, a species that had long been believed to be little more than a myth. And yet here they were, emerging from the depths of space like a ghost from the past, a civilization that had somehow managed to stay hidden from the Council's gaze, biding their time and growing in strength. As the human ship drew alongside the reconnaissance fleet, Korvax couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, that the balance of power in the galaxy was about to shift in ways that no one could have predicted. And as he stood there, watching the massive vessel fill the view screen, he knew that the true nature of their mission was only just beginning to reveal itself. The human envoy. The human ship dwarfed the Council's reconnaissance fleet, its sleek lines and advanced technology, a stark contrast to the functional design of the Council vessels. As it came to a halt alongside the fleet, a sense of unease rippled through the ranks of the Council crew. Korvax stood on the bridge of his ship, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. He had heard the legends of humanity, whispered stories passed down through the generations. They spoke of a species that had once been a part of the galactic community, before vanishing into the depths of space, never to be seen again. And yet here they were, emerging from the shadows like a ghost from the past. Korvax couldn't shake the feeling that their sudden appearance was no coincidence, that it was somehow tied to the mysterious signal that had brought them to this desolate world. As he watched, a small shuttle detached from the human ship, making its way towards the Council fleet. It was a sleek, elegant craft, its hull gleaming in the starlight. "They're requesting permission to come aboard," Zura said, her voice tight with tension. Korvax nodded, his expression grim. "Granted," he said, "but have a security team standing by, just in case." Moments later, the shuttle docked with Korvax's ship, and a small delegation of humans emerged onto the bridge. They were tall and slim, their features sharp and angular. They wore form-fitting suits of some unknown material, and carried themselves with a quiet confidence that bordered on arrogance. At their head was a woman, her hair a shock of white against her dark skin. She stepped forward, her eyes meeting Korvax's with a steady gaze. "Captain Korvax," she said, her voice low and melodious. "I am Ambassador Ilara of the human delegation. On behalf of my people, I greet you." Korvax inclined his head, his expression guarded. "Ambassador," he said, "your arrival is unexpected, to say the least. What brings you to this forgotten corner of the galaxy?" Ilara smiled, a hint of amusement playing across her features. "The same thing that brought you here, Captain," she said. "The signal." Korvax's eyes widened, surprise and suspicion warring in his mind. "You know of it?" he asked. "We do," Ilara said. "In fact, we have known of it for quite some time. It is the reason we have chosen to reveal ourselves now, after so many years in hiding." Korvax frowned, his brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand," he said. "What is this signal? What does it mean?" Ilara's expression grew serious, her eyes taking on a distant, almost haunted look. "It is a warning," she said softly. "A message from a civilization long dead. A plea for help against a threat that once consumed them, and now threatens to consume us all." Korvax felt a chill run down his spine at her words. He had seen the artifact, felt its power firsthand. And now, it seemed, he was beginning to understand the true nature of its purpose. "What kind of threat?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ilara shook her head, her expression grim. "An ancient enemy," she said. "One that has lain dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, with the discovery of the artifact, that moment has come." Korvax's mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. An ancient enemy, a threat that had once consumed an entire civilization. It was almost too much to comprehend. But one thing was clear. If the humans were right, if this threat was indeed real, then the galaxy was in grave danger. And the Council, with all its power and resources, might be the only thing standing in its way. "What do you propose we do?" Korvax asked, his voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at his gut. Ilara met his gaze, her eyes blazing with determination. "We must unite," she said, "humans and Council, together. Only by combining our strength can we hope to stand against this enemy." Korvax nodded, his expression grim. He knew that what she was proposing would not be easy. The Council races, proud and ancient, would not take kindly to the idea of allying with a species they had long thought lost. But he also knew that they had no choice. If the threat Ilara spoke of was real, then they would need every advantage they could get. "I will speak to the Council," he said. "I will make them understand the gravity of the situation. But I cannot promise that they will agree to an alliance." Ilara smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I understand," she said. "But we must try. For the sake of all our peoples, we must find a way to work together." As Korvax watched her turn and leave the bridge, He couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just changed in ways he could scarcely imagine. The arrival of the humans, the discovery of the artifact, the revelation of an ancient threat. It was almost too much to take in. But he knew that he had no choice but to try. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and he would do whatever it took to see it through. Even if it meant allying with a species that had once been little more than a legend. Even if it meant facing an enemy that had the power to destroy them all. For in the end, there was no other choice. The galaxy needed them, needed their strength and their courage. And Korvax would be damned if he let it down. The ancient threat. The council chamber was in uproar, the assembled representatives of a dozen worlds shouting and gesticulating as they argued over the course of action. At the center of the storm stood Korvax, his expression grim as he faced the accusatory stares of his fellow counselors. "You cannot seriously expect us to ally with these humans," spat Counselor Zath, his reptilian eyes narrowed in disgust. "They abandoned the galactic community eons ago, and now they expect us to welcome them back with open arms." "They did not abandon us," Korvax said, his voice calm but firm. "They left to pursue their own path, to find their own way in the universe, and now they have returned, bearing a warning of a threat that could destroy us all." "A threat?" scoffed Counselor Lyra, her melodic voice dripping with scorn. "What threat could possibly be so great that it would require us to ally with a species we know nothing about?" Korvax took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over the assembled counselors. "The artifact we discovered on the planet's surface," he said. "It is a message from a long-dead civilization, a warning of an enemy that once consumed them, and now threatens to consume us as well." A murmur of unease rippled through the chamber at his words, the counselors exchanging nervous glances. They had all seen the reports, read the data from the reconnaissance mission. They knew of the artifact's power, the strange energy readings and anomalous signals it had emitted. But to hear it spoken of as a warning, a harbinger of some ancient threat, it was almost too much to comprehend. "What kind of enemy?" asked the Archon, his voice heavy with concern. "What do we know of this threat?" Korvax shook his head, his expression grim. "Very little," he admitted. "The artifact speaks of a darkness, a malevolent force that swept across the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in its path. It speaks of a desperate struggle, a last-ditch effort to contain the threat, and of a sacrifice that was made to ensure its defeat." The chamber fell silent at his words, the counselors exchanging uneasy glances. They had all heard the legends, the whispered tales of ancient horrors and eldritch abominations that lurked in the depths of space. But to hear them spoken of as reality, as a tangible threat to their very existence, it was a sobering thought indeed. "And the humans?" asked Counselor Zath, his voice wary. "What role do they play in all of this?" Korvax hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The humans have a connection to this threat," he said. "They have knowledge of it, an understanding that goes beyond what the artifact alone can tell us, and they believe that only by working together, by combining our strengths, can we hope to stand against it." The chamber erupted into chaos once more, the counselors shouting and arguing as they debated the merits of Korvax's words. Some called for caution, for further study before any decision was made. Others demanded action, insisting that the threat must be met head-on before it had a chance to grow stronger. And through it all, Korvax stood firm, his gaze unwavering as he faced the storm of controversy. He knew that what he was proposing was risky, that allying with the humans would mean placing a great deal of trust in a species they knew little about. But he also knew that they had no choice. The galaxy was in danger, and the Council could not stand alone against the coming darkness. In the end, it was the Archon who made the decision. Rising from his seat, he addressed the chamber with a voice that carried the weight of ages. "The Council has heard the evidence," he said, his gaze sweeping over the assembled representatives. "And we have reached a decision. We will ally with the humans, combining our strength with theirs in the face of this ancient threat. Together, We will stand against the darkness, and together we will prevail." The chamber fell silent at his words, the counselors bowing their heads in acknowledgement. They knew that the Archon's word was law, that his decision was final. And as Korvax stood there, his heart racing with a mixture of relief and trepidation, he knew that the true struggle was only just beginning. For somewhere out there, in the depths of space, an ancient enemy was stirring, its malevolent gaze fixed upon the galaxy once more, and it would take all their strength, all their courage to stand against it in the battles to come. The Alliance tested. In the days that followed, the Council and the humans worked tirelessly to forge their new alliance. Ships and resources were shared, information exchanged, and strategies devised to counter the looming threat. But even as they worked together, tensions simmered beneath the surface. The Council races, proud and ancient, struggled to accept the humans as equals, while the humans chafed at the strict hierarchy and rigid traditions of their newfound allies. Korvax found himself caught in the middle, struggling to bridge the gap between the two factions. He spent long hours in meetings and negotiations, trying to find common ground and keep the fragile alliance from fracturing. But even as he worked to maintain the peace, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The humans, for all their knowledge and expertise, seemed to be holding something back, some crucial piece of information that they were unwilling to share. It was Ambassador Ilara who finally confirmed his suspicions. In a private meeting, she revealed the true nature of the threat they faced, the terrible secret that the humans had kept hidden for so long. "The enemy we face," she said, her voice low and urgent, "is not just some ancient horror from the depths of space. It is a part of us, a dark reflection of our own nature." Korvax felt a chill run down his spine at her words. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ilara hesitated, her eyes haunted. "Long ago," she said, "when our ancestors first set out among the stars, they encountered a force beyond their understanding. A power that promised them everything they ever wanted, but at a terrible price." She paused, her gaze distant. "Some of them accepted the bargain," she said softly. "They allowed themselves to be changed, transformed into something other, something dark and twisted, with a hunger that could never be sated." Korvax's mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. "And this darkness," he said, "it's what we're facing now." Ilara nodded, her expression grim. "It has many names," she said. "The void, the hunger, the abyss. But whatever you call it, it is a part of us, a shadow that we can never truly escape." Korvax felt a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. If what Ilara said was true, then the enemy they faced was far more insidious than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just some external threat, but a corruption that came from within, a darkness that lurked in the hearts of all living things. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" he asked, his voice tight with anger and betrayal. "Why keep it hidden?" Ilara met his gaze, her eyes full of sorrow and regret. "Because we were ashamed," she said softly. "Ashamed of what our ancestors had done, of the legacy they had left us. We thought that if we kept it secret, if we buried the truth, then maybe we could escape the shadow of our past." Korvax shook his head, his mind reeling. He understood her reasons, even if he couldn't condone them. But now, with the truth out in the open, they had no choice but to confront the darkness head-on. "We have to tell the Council," he said, his voice firm. "They need to know what we're really up against." Ilara nodded, her expression resolute. "I know," she said, "and I will stand with you, no matter what comes." In the days that followed, the truth of the humans' revelation spread like wildfire through the ranks of the Council. Some reacted with horror and revulsion, others with grim determination. But through it all, the Alliance held firm. The humans and the Council races, once so divided, now stood united in the face of a common enemy. And as the first reports of strange anomalies and eerie disturbances began to filter in from the far reaches of the galaxy, they knew that the final battle was fast approaching. The ancient enemy was awakening once more, stirring from its long slumber to cast its shadow over the stars. And the fate of the galaxy would be decided in the fires of war, as the alliance between humans and council was put to the ultimate test. The final battle. The darkness came without warning, a tidal wave of shadow and malice that swept across the galaxy like a plague. Worlds burned and stars winked out of existence as the ancient enemy made its presence known, its hunger insatiable, and its power unimaginable. But the alliance was ready. Human and council ships stood side by side, their weapons primed, and their crews steeled for battle. They had planned and prepared, honing their strategies and sharpening their skills, all in anticipation of this moment. At the head of the fleet stood the human battleship, a behemoth of sleek lines and advanced technology. Its weapons were unlike anything the Council had ever seen, its shields impenetrable and its engines capable of unimaginable speeds. And on its bridge stood Captain Ilara, her eyes blazing with determination as she gazed out at the sea of darkness before them. "This is it," she said, her voice ringing out across the fleet's comm channels. "The moment we've been waiting for. The moment we stand together, united against the darkness." Beside her, Korvax nodded, his expression grim. He had seen the reports, watched as world after world fell before the enemy's onslaught. He knew that this battle would be the hardest they had ever fought, a struggle for the very soul of the galaxy. But he also knew that they had no choice. The darkness had to be stopped, no matter the cost. As the fleet moved forward, the enemy ships came into view, a swarm of twisted, organic vessels that pulsed with malevolent energy. They were like nothing the Council had ever seen before, their very presence an affront to the natural order of things. And at their center, a shape out of nightmare, a vast, pulsating mass of darkness and hunger that seemed to draw the very light from the stars around it. The void, the hunger, the abyss. The ancient enemy had many names, but in that moment, it needed only one: death. The battle was joined in a flash of light and fire, the silence of space shattered by the roar of weapons and the screams of the dying. The Council ships fought with the skill and precision of 1,000 years of warfare, their weapons tearing through the enemy's twisted flesh and spilling ichor into the void. But the enemy was relentless, its numbers seemingly endless and its hunger never sated. For every ship that fell, a dozen more took its place, their forms shifting and changing in a nightmarish kaleidoscope of horror. And at the center of it all, the human battleship danced and weaved, its weapons flashing like the wrath of an angry god. Its shields held firm against the enemy's onslaught, its engines propelling it through the chaos with a speed and grace that defied belief. Ilara stood at the heart of the storm, her face a mask of concentration as she directed the flow of battle. Beside her, Korvax manned the weapons console, his fingers flying across the controls as he poured fire into the enemy's ranks. They were a perfect team, human and council working together in seamless harmony. And for a moment, just a moment, it seemed as if they might actually win. But then the void surged forward, its tendrils lashing out to ensnare the human ship. Its shields flared and buckled under the onslaught, its hull groaning under the strain. Ilara's face went pale, her eyes widening in horror as she realized the truth. The void wasn't just attacking them physically, but psychically as well, its malign influence seeping into the minds of her crew like a poison. One by one, they fell, their minds consumed by the darkness, until only Ilara and Korvax remained, alone on the bridge of a dying ship. But even in that final, desperate moment, they did not surrender. With a last, defiant cry, Ilara poured all of her ship's remaining power into its weapons, a final, blazing salvo that tore through the heart of the void like a lance of pure light. The ancient enemy recoiled, its form shuddering and twisting as the light burned away at its very essence, and for a moment, just a moment, it seemed as if the galaxy might be saved. But then the darkness surged forward once more, a tidal wave of hunger and malice that swept over the human ship like a black tide. And as the battleship disappeared into the maelstrom, its final screams echoing across the void. Korvax knew that the galaxy would never be the same again.